At this time, I'll go ahead and call the closed session meeting of September the 25th of the Yucaipa City Council to order. And go ahead and have our pledge.
Roll call?
Roll call first. How about that? Do we do roll call before the pledge?
We don't normally do the pledge for
Okay.
closed session.
Let's do it.
Councilmember Gardner?
Here.
Councilmember Thorpe?
Here.
Councilmember Venable?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan?
Here.
Absent from tonight's meeting is Mayor Beaver.
Okay, so now we'll have our Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah? I'll do it. How about that? I pledge allegiance
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So then at this time, I'll go ahead and convene to close session.
And for the record, we have no public comments.
And for the record, we have no public comment.
I do.
At this time, I'll go ahead and call the open session of the Yucaipa City Council of September the 25th to order. I'd like to welcome you all here. There are speaker slips in the back. If you want to speak to us on the council, fill out a speaker slip, give it to Anna Saucedo, our city clerk, and we'll be glad to accommodate you. We'll have our Pledge of Allegiance. Anna, would you go ahead and call the roll, please?
Councilmember Garner,
Here?
Councilmember Thorpe,
Here.
Councilmember Venable,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Duncan.
Here.
Absent from tonight's meeting is Mayor Beaver.
And the reason Mayor Beaver is not here tonight, I just got a text from him. He certainly wanted to be here. He's on his honeymoon. He got married on Monday, and so I'm assuming that he's having a much better time than this. So we have a closed session report.
Thank you, sir. Item A, no reportable action. Item B, no reportable action. Item C, the city council directed the city attorney not to intervene by consensus. That is the end of the closed session report.
Okay, thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, sir, one change. Would like to request that item 9 be pulled from the consent calendar and be presented separately by staff.
Okay, so item number 9 in the consent agenda will be pulled for discussion. And that brings us to the public safety update. Who's going to handle that?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. This will be your August 2023 Public Safety Police Department stats for the month of August. So in the month of August, we had 4,058 calls for service. That was an increase over July of 619 calls. Quite a significant increase. In August, we had 62 Part 1 crimes, which are those crimes listed below. And for the audience, these forms are in the back as well as up here on the projector. Our aggravated assaults dropped by 5 over July. Burglaries decreased by 3. We had a total of 19. Our larcenies or theft-related calls increased by 12, but they were still down from June of this year. So motor vehicle thefts were increased by 5, but again, we're down comparatively to June of this summer. And then no reported arsons, which is down 1 from July. In August, our deputies wrote 363 traffic citations. They investigated 45 traffic collisions. And again, if you remember from last month, that doesn't include late reported traffic collisions where someone comes into the station and we didn't actually respond out and take the call. Overall, we had 142 arrests for the city. 88 of those arrests were booked into one of our correctional facilities, and 54 of them were site released. Our most common arrests for the month of August were 39 narcotic-related offenses, 14 for outstanding warrants of some type, 7 domestic violence. We had 15 DUIs, which if you look below, that's an increase of 10 from July of this summer. And we attribute that to us participating in Office of Traffic Safety grant-funded programs, which are DUI or traffic-specific programs that are funded through the state. We receive funding for those, and we have an increased presence just specifically targeting driving under the influence, other campaigns like Click It or Ticket, things like that, that you've seen. And you probably noticed there was a DUI checkpoint out here on the boulevard not too long ago. For this month, I wasn't able to calculate the emergency response for last month when I reported to the council. For this month, I had to manually do it just so the council had an idea of what our response times were. I know that's important to the community. Still don't have the ability to pull it for priority one calls, but the emergency type calls, if you can see, our response time is right around 5.5 minutes, which is up just slightly from June and July, which was right around the 4.5 minute mark. So a number that we're always trying to lower, and we're always trying to be cognizant of. We know when the public calls for our help, especially in emergency situations, they want us there as quickly as possible. So we always strive to keep that number as low as possible. And that 5.5 minute number, just for reference for you, is from the time somebody called 911 and was speaking to a dispatcher to the time we arrived. And you got to remember, there's a little bit of a time delay in there as the dispatcher is taking the information, inputting it into our system, and then dispatching a deputy to the house. So, and that's the month of August report. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions? No? I want to thank you for that outstanding report. We appreciate all that you do. We will never defund the police in Yucaipa. I promise you that. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Evening, council. So this will be your fire update for August. So we had a little bit of an issue calculating our response times. I anticipate they're going to be the same or higher. We're just having an issue with our system right now. We want to make sure they're valid before we published it to you and the public. But we did see a large increase. We saw an 8% increase from July and about an 18.3% increase from this same time last year. So we ran a total of 802 calls. Last August was a 18% increase from last August. And there's the breakdowns right there by station. We also had the Tropical Storm Hillary, which we gave you guys a full briefing on, but just for the benefit of the public. We had evacuation orders, OES response, a lot of mutual aid coming in, Cal Fire Master Mutual Aid providing us resources, and we were able to mitigate that and keep the damage to a minimum. We attended National Night Out with our law enforcement partners, and we assisted San Bernardino Cal Fire as the IC on the Beaumont Vegetation Fire out in Loma Linda, and also the San Diego Bunny as a division group supervisor. And just some projects we have going on right now is our site survey for the Wildwood Community Wildfire Protection Plan. So we did a site walkthrough with them, and that's that group that's doing that so they can apply for grants and identify on the Fire Safe Council what the hazards are. And then also doing site inspections for Wildwood Christian that just opened their new elementary school. We help them do their safety plan there as well. And that's what I have for you for August, unless there's any questions.
Any questions of? Thank you. Outstanding report. We appreciate your work. Code enforcement's next.
All right, thank you all, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members. As part of code enforcement was a busy month as well. The city's code enforcement did receive 135 new cases that were reported. This does not include the number of reports that we received, since some property or violations will get several reports on one individual property. Of those 135, 7 of them were not valid complaints, but the rest of them were. As part of code enforcement activity, they did have 271 inspections completed and 145 citations that were issued, and 29 cases that have been closed and resolved. In terms of mobile home park activity, no comprehensive inspections were completed. City staff usually tries to keep them in the fall and spring months just because it's hot out, and we usually have quite a bit of residents that do attend those meetings, and so we do try to make sure that the weather is temperate enough for those individuals. But we are also scheduling a comprehensive all-hands type of mobile home park inspection, which includes PD, building and safety, and the fire department as well, and so we're getting that scheduled for fall as well. I do want to note, kind of as part of the city's code enforcement activities, we did do a recruitment for a fourth code officer. So our in-house community liaison, they did start in September, so I'll have that update for next month. But you'll see kind of their reference in terms of the homeless outreach plan that will be presented later tonight, but they're going to be an instrumental figure on helping PD with the code enforcement side of dealing with nuisance properties and making sure that those property owners are responsive to those problems. And so that's all I have, and thank you. If you have any questions, let me know.
Any questions? Thank you. Excellent report. Okay, that wraps up our public safety update, which brings us next to our city manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wanted to give the council and the community a brief update on a community meeting that staff held on Tuesday of last week. The topic of discussion was the property that is currently approved for the Serrano Estates residential development project. A little history, that project was approved by the City Council on April 17th after many months of sometimes very contentious discussion and public comment on the project. Project is located on the east side of Yucaipa Ridge Road, north of Ivy Avenue, directly adjacent to Court Street and Crystal Street. Not long after City Council approval of that project, in mid-June or so, the individual who owns that property, Mr. Fitzroy, reached out via email with a proposal to sell the property to the city. Some of the conditions that he suggested were probably not in the city's best interest and frankly, probably couldn't be done legally by a government entity. However, the very fact that that was being proposed made us think, maybe there's an opportunity here to acquire the property. So in mid-July, the City Council authorized me to negotiate a tentative deal to purchase the property. We entered into those negotiations, and the hope being that such a deal would stop a controversial development from being built, would facilitate reconciliation with the community, and also be a good investment for the city. And in addition, also provide some amenities for the community. We were able to negotiate good terms for the purchase and sale of the property. The agreed upon purchase price was $3.375 million, which is $1,110,000 under the appraised property value of $4,485,000. But the City Council asked that we reach out to the community and get a sense of community sentiment and get input from the community before deciding whether or not to move forward on the deal. So we did that on Tuesday of last week. We had a pretty good turnout. I think there were, I was told there were 96 chairs set up. Most of the chairs were taken, not all of them. And we did have some people standing as well. So I'm guessing we might have had somewhere around 100 people in attendance. And we had a very open, frank discussion with the community. We got a lot of good feedback. And at the end of the meeting, we did an informal kind of a show of hands poll. And the results were that a minority of the group felt that the city should move forward and purchase the property. A strong majority of the group felt the city should not at this time move forward to purchase the property. And when asked, should the city move forward and purchase the property only after taking time to put a plan together and fully analyze potential financial impacts and whether the city could find uses there that would be satisfactory to residents while also producing revenue, a majority of the room raised their hands for that question as well. There was a lot of good feedback. A lot of the feedback was focused on financial risk. And I thought there were some very valid points that were made because the landowner was in a hurry if this deal was to be done. The city would have to make the decision to buy the property before studies could be done to analyze revenue, before a plan could be put together and finalized for the property. And so given that, a majority of the residents that attended that meeting gave the feedback that that was probably too financially risky. Proposed uses that were discussed included perhaps, vineyard, perhaps equestrian, and others. And, those are industries that sometimes have pretty thin margins. And the ability of the city to enter into arrangements by which those would produce reliable revenue, boy, that would really have to be studied and nailed down on the front end. So my report back to you is that the community meeting went well, was well attended, a lot of good feedback, but the sentiment of the majority of the room was that the city should not move forward and acquire the property at this time. And so I know the direction of this council was to only move forward if this would in fact be kind of a means by which to bring the community back together, to address concerns, and would be overwhelmingly supported by the community as opposed to something that might become controversial. So based on the feedback that we received, we did not put on the open session agenda today an item to approve a purchase and sale agreement, and are not planning on proceeding with acquiring the property.
Okay, so the general consensus is we are not going to move forward with any acquisition of that property. I just want to make sure everybody understands that the decision was made by the city council, and that if this meeting was positive and it would help mend the fences or bridge the gap and in the community and let the community know that we heard what you said, then we were going to move forward if that was the case. But it was not the case, and so therefore the decision was made that we're not going to pursue that, okay? Okay, so that brings us to, so thank you very much for that report. I appreciate it very much. So that brings us to public comment, and Mr. James Penman has requested to be first, and so at this time I'll go ahead and call Mr. James Penman to the podium. Mr. Penman, tell us where you're from, where you live, and you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Your Honor, and good evening. Mayor Duncan, Councilman Thorpe, Councilman Venable, Councilman Garner. My name is Jim Penman. I'm with the law firm of Milligan, Beswick, Levine, and Knox. I've been in the practice of law for over 40 years. I served for 26 years as the elected city attorney for the city of San Bernardino, and I'm a member of the bar of the Supreme Court of the United States. On May 17th, the three-man city council majority, through their city manager and city clerk, caused the filing of a pointless lawsuit against 197 Yucaipa citizens. Why? Because they dared to exercise their right to recall their elected officials. Our firm represents 142 of those 197 victims. On August 24, we won their case in court when Judge Sachs agreed with their position that the recall was moot. Our clients were wrongfully accused of submitting false and misleading information to the city. They were falsely accused of committing a misdemeanor crime, and then the city even made the false claim it had won the lawsuit. None of those statements were true. In fact, to use a word favored by President Theodore Roosevelt, those charges are bull feathers. On May 24, 7 days after the lawsuit was filed, I personally telephoned and emailed Mr. Hertz, the LA attorney hired to prosecute this unnecessarily expensive lawsuit. We offered then to withdraw the recall petitions. At that point, the lawsuit became legally moot. On August 24, Judge Sachs agreed. Last Thursday, the city finally agreed to our demand to dismiss the lawsuit and submit the matter of attorney fees to the court for determination pursuant to law. Our clients understand the city clerk works for the city manager, and he works for the city council majority, which constitutes the ruling group here in Yucaipa. The city clerk's name and office were hijacked to file and perpetrate this lawsuit. She had no ability to decline and no authority to stop the litigation. Following our victory in court, it became evident that the city was going to have to pay much more in attorney fees than this case continued. That enabled Mr. Grand to give accurate legal advice to the mayor and council. Ms. Saucedo was permitted to dismiss the lawsuit. No resident of this city should ever again be falsely accused of a crime they did not commit, especially a political crime, nor should they be punished and their bank account drained because they exercised their rights as Americans. Our attorney fees are $500 an hour. We're willing to settle the case the next few days for $450 an hour. That'll save the Yucaipa citizens many thousands of dollars. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. And my thanks especially to Ms. Sauceda and Mr. Graham for their professionalism. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your comments. That brings us to Virginia Gautier. Did I say that right? Okay, sorry about that. My apologies. Go ahead and tell us where you live and talk to us.
Okay, I live at 31509 Marbeth Road in Yucaipa, which I already thought about that, because you guys want to build right there and then have those idiots get down to the freeway and speed down my street. And I think that you guys had someone out there excavating to see how much it's going to cost to put speed bumps. Thank you very much. My next thing is this. We've lived in Yucaipa for over 40 years, and my family has lived in Yucaipa since 1950. I'm very, very angry at the speeders, the ones that speed down Oakland Road and speed down Yucaipa Boulevard. The speed limit is 40. I go 40. I get honked at. I get people turning their lights on and off, and when they do pass me, they flip me off. I am going the speed limit. And we need to put signs, and my husband says this is ridiculous. Our signs that say 40 miles an hour limit. Limit means that's as far as you go, no more. Underneath that, put we mean it, okay? And then just beyond that, put a sign as to how much speeding tickets cost. Okay, we need 2 to 3 more motor cops. I don't know what happened to the other ones, but every time a motor cop issues a ticket, that money will pay for their motorcycles and their wages. I know it sounds kind of ridiculous, but I'm sick and tired of being in this wonderful little town, which is no longer because of these greedy developers, and being flipped off because I'm going the speed limits, okay? You need to do a correction on that. You need to enforce the speed limit, maybe put the definition of what limit means, no more than. And if you're going to be building more, like I'm glad this Bryant thing is not going to happen, or this surround, because I was ready to fight that one. I managed to get rid of the building over there in where the wash is at. They aren't going to build there. My concern is you put these people up there, they got to race down Yucaipa Boulevard, they got to race down Calamasa Boulevard, they're going to race down County Line Road to get to the freeway. No one listens or reads that speed limit. So if you could get some way to figure out, like I say, we need more motor cops in our city. When I first came to Yucaipa, I was behind a motorcycle cop, and I came around him, well, he was in a vehicle, and there was 4 senior citizens in their car, and what the officer said to them was, folks, can you go a little faster? That was the way Yucaipa was back when we came. But now you've moved all these people in here, and they don't understand what 40 miles an hour limit means. Give them the definition, give them the tickets, bring in some more officers, pay for them, and you watch how fast some officers are going to give them tickets. If they're going to make money off these tickets, they're going to be giving them. And even if it's just temporary, do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. We appreciate your comments. Lloyd Regstad.
Lloyd Rexdad, Fremont Court. As an agitated Yucaipa citizen, I want to take this opportunity to comment on the community meeting convened last Tuesday to discuss the Serrano Estates property. I want to thank our current city manager for doing a really good job of presenting the information and moderating the discussion. That meeting is a testimony to the fact that when issues are presented to the folks of this city in an open and transparent forum, positive results can be achieved and civility can be maintained. I hope this council will take note of that fact, that dignity and decorum are much more unifying than secrecy and chicanery. That Tuesday night meeting was a perfect illustration of the fact that we are reasonable, we are united, We are resolute and we are focused on appropriate residential development in the community. This council needs to understand that the, quote, North Bench crowd, unquote, is not the driving force behind the resistance to so much of the action of this council. First of all, I don't live anywhere near the North Bench, yet I have a legitimate and constant skepticism of the decisions coming from this council. The driving force behind the resistance to you goes back to the actions of the January 9th coup d'etat. The secrecy and total lack of ethics and propriety in handling the city manager's position still creates a deep sense of distrust and cynicism. The credibility of this council is gone. And when credibility is lost, it's nearly impossible to restore. Having said that, I will repeat that the Tuesday night meeting and the Thursday afternoon meeting, which was convened by a citizen in the community, Mark Westberg, regarding the mobile home issues, were both steps in the right direction to restore a degree of trust. Jennifer, Ben, and Madeline did a very good job of representing the city at that meeting, and their honesty and transparency was refreshing. Council members, don't forget, we are a community of good, intelligent, reasonable citizens, and when you conduct business openly and with transparency, we'll listen. If you repeat the actions of January 9th fiasco, you will again be vociferously resisted.
Thank you. Thank you, Lloyd. I appreciate your comments. Martha Glubka, please. Go ahead and tell us where you live, Martha, and tell us what's on your mind.
Good evening, Council. As you can see, I have nothing. I'm going to talk off the cuff tonight. And I live in Yucaipa, Whisper Ranch. That's it? Okay.
That's fine, yeah.
Okay. I also want to tell Chris we really appreciated the meeting. It went, to all of us, it went very well. There was no craziness. There was a lot of good ideas that were brought forth, both by people that come to council all the time, and then some that we've never seen before, but had some really good points made. So we appreciated that. And I guess what I want to suggest to council is it would be really good, and it would be good for the morale of everyone if we could have a meeting with you all as well. In order to establish trust again, there's going to have to be something, and I think we all know that. I don't think you trust us. We don't trust you, most of you. And that's a problem, and it's something none of us want to have. It's tension for everybody involved. I also think that if that city, or if Serrano gets sold, let's say to someone else or whatever, I think it would be really good to change that back to the general plan. I think there was a mistake made with that. I don't know if any of you will admit that or not, but I do think it was a mistake to ever put that down with smaller partials. And I think that's something you should consider in the future. If in fact that gets sold, it coming to city council 5 times before that was, it shouldn't have ever come to council that many times. No is no. So maybe there needs to be some kind of a resolution 3 times and you're out, you know? So that's all I've got to say, but again, thank you, Chris. We appreciate that. We appreciate that you allowed him to come and be transparent with us. It was important to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your kind words. We appreciate it. Kathy Sellers.
Kathy Sellers, District 1. The ill-conceived recall lawsuit is coming to a close. There is a need for healing. The city we live in together has been broken and divided. I have been personally attacked, as well as other good people with pure hearts and strong moral values. I feel that I have become an accidental activist and a part of a team of thousands. Enormous amounts of money have been wasted that could have been spent to benefit our entire city. Save Yucaipa has been described as the, quote, North Bench mob who live on Snob Hill, spreading a bunch of propaganda, trying to save the North Bench and screw the rest of Yucaipa, close quote. Nothing could be further from the truth. We wish to save Yucaipa from becoming the next Moreno Valley. We can finally put to rest the egregious attempt by City Hall to stop an honest and well-meaning campaign created to shed light on what's being done to our city by self-serving individuals. This city's 35,000 registered voters are entitled to hear all sides of the conflict, become educated, and make a choice. To the people of Yucaipa, we've heard your voices and we know how powerful they are. Make sure you're ready to use them in our elections this coming year, whatever form that takes. Contrary to what Save Yucaipa has been accused of, no one is anti-development or trying to impede progress. We can all agree that Yucaipa can be improved to be a more beautiful version of herself by only honoring the vision and commitments put in place by past dedicated council and honest community leaders. Have decisions been made in the past that would be different now? Of course, hindsight is 20/20. Premium Land Development has been involved in numerous projects in Yucaipa and is owned by a convicted felon who served 10 years in prison for a $5.3 million scam victimizing seniors in telemarketing fraud and has undeniable ties to sitting council and planning commission members. Yucaipa deserves better. These are some of the facts that our citizens deserve to know. We've been told that our city is on shaky financial ground, but yet millions of dollars of our safety net can now be tapped for speculative land deals with no sound explanation of how that will benefit anyone but developers and special interests, and that the city must act quickly lest the bad Chinese developers come in and force their will on the people. A strong, honest city council can steer the city clear of disaster. Our citizens deserve that leadership. We welcome open dialogue with the property owners. The city shouldn't be getting involved with property speculation as the middleman. The past 4 months have been nothing more than an attempt to silence and intimidate thousands of engaged citizens by suing and threatening 197 residents who stepped up and signed a petition so that the entire city could have a voice, our city.
Thank you for your kind words. Steve Freeman. Steve, go ahead and tell us where you live and tell us what's on your mind.
I live at 35155 Juniper Avenue. Sort of the same subject. The property, the Serrano property is for sale, we know that. Apparently the city is not going to buy it. So another developer is going to buy it. And I'm just curious as to how that process will work. When that property is purchased, does the purchaser also get the same plan that was in effect? Or do they have to start from scratch, present their own plan, go to the planning commission, go to you folks, what have you? Can city attorney or city manager, can you give me an idea about that?
This is not the time that we do that. This is the time that you tell us what's on your mind, and you want to come back later to City Hall there.
I'll send them an email or something then, okay? Because I'm just curious as to what happens from here forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. We appreciate it. And if you'll contact City Hall, I'm sure they'll answer all your questions. George Sardison, go ahead and tell us where you live and tell us what's on your mind.
George Sardison, 12451 Custer Street in Division 4, City Council District. While at a fundraiser car show yesterday, a group of us was approached by a lady promoting another charity car show. The woman was Sandy Wood, Executive Director of the Lighthouse for the Blind in San Bernardino. She knew that we were all planning to participate in her next event next month, but she just wanted to stop and say hi. Sandy knows me from my car club activities and said that she recently read in the Sun paper about Yucaipa suing its citizens for wanting to recall 3 council members and saw my name mentioned in the story. "What's that all about?" she asked. Well, all I could tell her was that our city hall has become politicized by the actions of our city council on January 9th, and that we now have a city clerk that is conflicted and unreasonable in becoming a puppet of the 3 council members who are the subjects of recall. It is unfortunate that the city clerk had to take her marching orders from someone, most likely her boss, and become the face of this conflict with the citizens of our city. We have heard the term provide political cover before. This whole ordeal has become very personal for me. As the first named proponent on the document filed with the court, the case scheduled on display in the courtroom on both dates where I was in attendance reads, Plaintiff Salceda, Defendant Sardison, for all to see. I was there on both occasions with my attorney. I questioned why the city clerk was not in attendance with hers. It seems it should be part of her duties in this matter. City Clerk Salceda, I want you to know that I hold no ill will towards you personally. The only reason that we find ourselves in this situation lays at the feet of council members Garner, Duncan, and Beaver, and the decision that they made on that fateful night of January 9th. We all know that the First Amendment allows us to criticize our leaders. I close with this quote, nothing kills faith in your government better than actually paying attention to it. We, the citizens, continue paying attention. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Appreciate your comments. Colleen Wong? Go ahead and tell us where you're from and what's on your mind.
35150 Court Street in Yucaipa, District 1.
Speak into that mic so I can actually hear you. That'd be great.
35150 Court Street in Yucaipa, District 1. We all attended that meeting this week about the project up on Yucaipa Ridge Road. And we were able to give some input, and surprise, surprise, we weren't anti-development as you have continuously accused us of, because we've always thought that that land would be developed. We just figured that it was going to follow the general plan, the 1 house per acre. But we have a general planner in this city who doesn't interpret that the way it's written, 1 house per 1 acre, as our general plan describes it. What I'm wondering is in the future, when we again exercise our right to speak and be heard by this council and the citizens of this city, hopefully you're not again going to sue us because we don't say things exactly the way you wanted it written, even though that is our constitutional right as well, to say things that aren't received well. What I'm wondering is, your AVA plan is going to come before the citizens pretty soon, I imagine, say within the next month or 2. Are we going to have any meaningful ability to address the council about that on any level? Can we have another community meeting where we can have a meaningful discussion with y'all? That's my hope.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. I appreciate your comments. So Hanson Wong is next.
Good evening. Thank you for the time. Mayor Pro Tem didn't have to give me the spiel of what to say because I'm Hanson Wong from 35150 Court Street in Yucaipa, California, because I'm up here so much that they just figure if I didn't know the routine, they'd probably throw me out anyway. Again, I appreciated seeing the Mayor Pro Tem supporting one of our local businesses the other day. So thank you. And I want to thank Mr. Mann for having the community meeting where there was a appropriate dialogue, and I think one that has helped all. I did learn a few things that I thought I would re-emphasize to the city council members because of the effects of what we do. First of all, looking for ways to increase our revenue is appropriate, and we need different things. We need to try and do it the best way we can. But again, when we look at things that we need to do to increase our revenue, we have to make sure that historically those things are going to be fairly safe and bring us a fair amount of revenue, and not just what some people like. Some things are more hobbies than others. Some things are more business than others. The other thing that I learned from our community members that were at the meeting was the fact that city-owned property go through a different route once they decide to give it up. So that, you know, if you purchase land to make money and create a park out of it or something else like that, that's one thing. But if you purchase the land and then you're going to sell it later, then the people who has first rights to it don't necessarily have to follow the general plan and could create affordable housing in a different way, as far as I understand. And I could be wrong. I'm sure Ben will let me know if I am wrong about this. And so, again, there are many things that all of us learn. It seemed to be very cordial overall. I was probably the only one that yelled because I didn't speak at all. And again, I remind you, Make a Difference Day is coming up. The committees are going forward. And thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. We appreciate your comments. John Harris, next.
Because I want to say, Mr. Duncan, and to the other two, Mr. Garner and the mayor, that we support you in what you've been doing here since January. My name is Relevant Elephant, and I'm a long-term citizen here in Yucaipa. And I just want to make a little comparison for you. Our great God-given president, Donald Trump, went and broke the rules to do what's right. And if that takes behind closed door meetings where we get rid of the city manager and then we come out and we get another one in, then praise the Lord, I believe that is the right thing to do. If we need development, we need to go around the rules. So thank you for doing that. I'd like to propose the next step in the city's plan. It's called land leveling, and I know that there's a lot of dirt up there in Oak Glen that's going to waste, and a lot of land in the wash between Wildwood Canyon and H that's going to waste. What I think we should do is we should start a movement right now where we take dirt from the hills and fill the valleys and make more room for housing. And maybe, what do you think? Would you like to see a freeway right there where the wash is today? I think so. So thank you, thank you, thank you for doing what's right in the eyes of Donald Trump and Jesus Christ.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so that brings us to our consent agenda.
Mayor Pro Tem?
We've got 22 items on the consent agenda.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah,
If I could just make a brief comment.
sure, go ahead.
Thank you.
So that wasn't on my agenda, but go ahead.
So the Brown Act does allow us to briefly respond to members of the public, and we did have several members of the public tonight come and speak about the litigation which has recently been dismissed. I just wanted to briefly respond to that. First off, I wanted to thank my colleague, Mr. Penman, for coming here tonight to extend his settlement offer. I hope we don't add that to the bill, Jim. But I did want to say that the city clerk did initiate the litigation as the elections official. The city council did not direct that litigation be filed. A majority of the council is the subject of the recall petition. It would have been a conflict of interest for the city council to meet and to give that direction. The city clerk filed that lawsuit to prevent the circulation of the petitions, and the petitions were not circulated. From that perspective, the city clerk believes that she has prevailed. And obviously, the recall proponents believe they have as well. I anticipate they'll be filing a motion for attorney's fees. The city clerk will be opposing that motion, so stay tuned. But I did want to congratulate, I think, the council and the community on what I think is probably one of the most civil public comment periods I've heard since I attended, and I'd like to thank Mr. Penman for probably setting the tone for that and getting us started. I think it's shown that people can disagree in this community, but still speak to each other with respect. So thank you, Mayor, for your time. Just wanted to add that into the record.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, so that brings us to the consent agenda. Are we good to go now? Yeah. Consent agenda. We had one item on the consent agenda that's been pulled for discussion. That's item number 9. And, but other than that, we've got items number.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the development program or the development thing that's going on California Street.
It's inappropriate, my friend, for you to be speaking right now. So just, if you want to speak, well, it's too late to get a public comment slip in, or is it too late to do that? It's too late to do that.
Mr. Mayor, it is, but if the gentleman would like to give his information to the city clerk,
Yeah, so-
staff can reach out and address any questions. Yes, sir.
So if you want to give your information to the city clerk, Ms. Sauceda here, before the meeting's over, she will reach out to you and answer any questions you have or give you any information you need. Okay, so again, that brings us to our consent agenda. Our consent agenda has 22 items on it tonight. We have agreed to pull number 9. Number 9, go ahead.
I'd like to ask that the city council pull the minutes for the special meeting of August 24th. If you could pull those minutes will be brought back at a later date for approval.
Okay, so now it's getting complicated. So we're going to go ahead then and pull on item 1, the minutes from August 24th? 24th? Okay, so let me, okay, and then we're going to pull that, so that won't be included in the motion. And then we're going to pull item number 9, which also will not be included in the motion, and that will get us through the consent agenda. So, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I have a couple of questions on a couple.
You have a couple of questions on items in the consent agenda?
Yeah, I do. 10, 13,
So
and
do
21.
we need to pull those for discussion if you have questions about them? I think if you have questions about anything that's on the consent agenda, then we need to pull that.
Mayor Pro Tem, if he just has a brief question
Just
that can be
question.
answered,
Right.
then it doesn't need to be pulled. But if
Okay.
you want to have a full discussion about it, I'd recommend you pull it.
Okay, go ahead. I'm
No,
sorry, go ahead.
just a few questions. On consent number 10, that's the city yard. How long before we're done and the guys can actually get in that? Because it's been lingering on forever.
Just a quick update on the city yard. The utilities have been installed, the Edison meter has been installed. This contract that's on the agenda tonight is the paving and the hardscape. But for the most part, a lot of the equipment and materials have already been moved. The Edison meter was installed just last week. We're waiting for the energized date, which I believe last meeting I had reported that we would be complete and moving in towards the end of September. So we're hoping in the next 2 weeks that'll be completed. But with this item here, this will be the second to the last item, the last one being the landscaping, which is something that we're working with the water district to get those plans approved.
But the city has moved in, our public works guys have moved in?
Yes, with the exception of the office.
Okay. So on 13, that's where are we at?
Electric vehicle charging station?
Yeah. Now, is that something for the city's use, or is that for public? It is public.
It's, the proposal is for electric vehicle charging stations at public city facilities.
Okay.
So it would be the community center, the White Pack in the Uptown, and then City Hall.
And then they pay to charge?
Yes, it's for, it's to enter into a contract with a third party who will, at no cost, no upfront cost to the city, essentially install the infrastructure and manage the charging stations. I would like to note that the first step, though, with approval of this item, is to complete a market and feasibility study, which will present the city with all the details. So what we're seeking here tonight is City Council's approval to move forward with that first step and authorize the city manager to enter into that contract.
Okay, and then 21 was the Wilson Basin. Is that one's not complete yet, is it?
No, item 21 is related to Phase 1C. As council is aware, that project is planned to be completed in phases. So this is the third phase. You know, we completed Phase 1A, 1B, and with this one, 1C.
How many more phases do we have?
There's a Phase 1D and then Phase 2, which will complete the Second Street crossing and the channel improvements downstream.
So, okay. All right, thank you.
Did that satisfy your questions? You sure? Okay, so let's try that again. So we got items number 1, and we're going to exclude the minutes, and we've got 9 that we've pulled, and we've answered questions about a couple of others. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll move.
Okay, John moved the motion,
I'll second.
and Matt seconded the motion, so I got a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so then that brings us to item number 9. Who's going to handle item number 9? You are.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council. Item 9 is related to the Community Facilities District for Chapman Heights. So as a reminder, in July, you approved the assessments, the annual assessments for that CFD. Included in that staff report was a 9.5% decrease in the annual assessments. There was also a teaser that there could be future more savings coming at a later time. Tonight is that later time. So included as number 9 is the refunding for the debt related to the Chapman Heights CFD. With me, these handsome gentlemen over to the right it's our municipal advisor, Julio Morales, and Jeff Land with Oppenheimer. They're our underwriters for this debt issuance. If you have any questions, they'll be happy to answer them. One other reminder, the city acts in a fiduciary capacity for the Chapman Heights CFD. We don't have a direct financial interest. We act in a fiduciary capacity. We administer their debt. There was an opportunity that Julio brought to us for savings for the property owners in Chapman Heights, so we pursued that. This presentation is a brief overview of what that deal looks like. Chapman Heights is about 1,100 acres. City of Yucaipa is about 17,000 acres, so it's a pretty good sized development within the city of Yucaipa. Back in 1998, $30 million of bonds were authorized. They were for the street utilities, parks, and landscaping, water and sewer facilities within the district, and storm drain facilities within the district. There was a special tax imposed to repay that debt. In 2011, that debt was refunded. Because of market conditions, maybe not where they were a couple years ago, but still today, there was a opportunity for to refinance that debt and provide the property owners within that district savings. So this is a outline of what that debt looks like, what that deal looks like. Currently, there's about $12.7 million in outstanding bonds related to Chapman Heights. After this deal, there'll be $10.5 million of debt related to Chapman Heights. Through this process, we had a rating call. The city's rating was upgraded to A+, so that was a big deal as far as that goes. One of the key points in this debt issuance is with debt, there's typically a debt service reserve fund that's held, cash held for the future payment. Through this deal, that's going to be converted into a surety policy insurance, and so that debt will be freed up for savings for those property owners. Over in the box on the right, that's the meat and potatoes of the savings for those property owners. Cash flow savings of about $3.5 million. From a net present value standpoint, that's about $3 million. It's a significant number because the debt was not extended. If there's 7 years left on the debt, by 2030, that debt will be repaid. Through this refunding that wasn't extended out, it's still the same amount of time. There's just $3 million of savings for those property owners. That translates to about $1,900 per parcel per year, and annual savings of about $272. That $272 is going to be each year over the remaining life of that debt. So over the next 7 years, those property owners will recognize about $270 a year in reduced annual assessments. All of that, again, the city does not have a direct financial benefit, but through this deal, the city there is about $500,000 that is to be used for infrastructure within Chapman Heights. Without that funding, when those things came up, the city would have to consider whether general fund money was going to be used to pay for those improvements. Now, through this refunding, $500,000 was generated to improve infrastructure within the district. So that's a big deal too. Not only the property owners have savings, but indirectly the city does, because any infrastructure that need to be met, there's $500,000 sitting there that can be used to pay for those things. And this last slide is just a brief debt service schedule. Right down there's that $10.5 million over the next 7 years. There's 2030 is when that debt will be completely repaid. And you can see the savings over here. This column is the cash flow, and this is the net present value of that $3 million. With this item, there is a resolution attached to the staff report, and we are asking for approval of that resolution. That is a bunch of disclosures. Also handed out as a late addition to your packet is a good faith estimate, and that goes through the required disclosures as far as the key points of the deal. So I won't go through that at this time, but that was handed out late. There are also copies in the back for public that is interested in that late edition as well. With that, I will open it up for questions if you have any, and introduce Julio Morales and Jeff Land if you have any questions for them.
John, you have any questions? Chris? Matt? So the property owners are going to receive a notification that they're going to be getting a $272 refund per year, or a reduction in their fees?
Yeah, that notification will probably, yes, they will be receiving a notification. It won't necessarily be a refund. It will be reflected as a reduction of future assessments. So when we meet back up with you next year to set the assessments, the reduced costs associated with paying off that debt will all be baked into the calculation for those assessments. So they won't get a $272 check. They will get a reduction in next year's assessment. So in July, that 9.5% reduction translated to, I want to say, about $150. So this translates into almost double that, almost a 20% reduction in their annual assessments on a go-forward basis over every year for the next 7 years.
Okay. No questions? You want to have a motion then to approve or accept?
Yeah, to authorize the resolution.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, item number 9 passes in the consent agenda. So that brings us to number 23. Or, I'm sorry, mayor and council member business reports. Matt, do you have any business to report?
No, not at this time.
Don? Okay, John?
Nope.
Chris?
Make a difference day. Hope to see all you guys out there and plant a tree. And Autumn Fest, here we got Autumn Fest coming up. We got a lot of stuff going on in the city of Yucaipa in the next few months. And I'd love to see every one of you guys out there support us, all Healthy Yucaipa group, Trails and Open Spaces. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of fun stuff that goes on in Yucaipa that if you don't know, go on our website. They have all kinds of different stuff. It's great to see. We're trying to get pump tracks going for mountain biking. I think we have a trail, our hike coming up, don't we? And then we have turkey trot coming, a lot of great things coming on. Stuff. 5 Winds coming. We got some good artists coming around. A lot of fun stuff. Hopefully see everybody there.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. That brings us to department reports, item number 23.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, the item in front of you tonight, staff recommends that City Council adopt a resolution approving and adopting the local roadway safety plan for the city of Yucaipa. Local roadway safety plan was developed to help identify and analyze roadway safety concerns throughout the city. The LRSP recommends potential roadway safety improvements to enhance public safety and emergency response. Part of the LRSP was developed in coordination with local stakeholders, including public safety, which includes Yucaipa Police Department, San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, Yucaipa Fire Department, Omnitrans, as well as the Yucaipa Calamasa Joint Unified School District. The LRSP development was funded by a grant from Caltrans, and the LRSP is required by Caltrans to be eligible for any future safety improvement programs and other grant funding. Some type of projects that those fundings will assist with will be traffic signal modifications, roadway safety countermeasures, and educational countermeasures. The next slide is a sample of general funded traffic safety enhancement projects in the fiscal year 23-24 CIP. They include traffic signal projects, pedestrian crossing and sidewalk projects, roundabouts, as well as street widening projects. Now I'm going to pass a torch over to Fermi to discuss the CIP project funding sources.
Thank you, Todd. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. As you're aware, over the last 20 years or so, the city has invested over $211 million to improve public infrastructure through the city's capital improvement program. And as you can see on the graph, approximately 38% of that $211 million has come from either federal, state, or local grant funding sources. And that number grows to 49% if you include funding from other partner agencies. The grant funding has been a huge benefit in improving public infrastructure, and we foresee it continuing in the future. The adoption of this local roadway safety plan does open a door for other grant funding opportunities moving forward. And as was mentioned earlier, one of the primary purposes or reasons for this plan is to continue to improve public safety on our roadways. That concludes our report, and staff is available for questions.
Any questions of staff?
I have one.
Go ahead.
So we get the safety plan, we get the resolution done, the safety plan adopted. That safety plan has a section of recommendations that need to be addressed in the city.
Correct.
What's our next step to address those?
The next step is, and Fermin can provide input if needed, is to go through and evaluate the programs and see what recommendations are available, then to see financial aspects or grants that are available to help offset those costs for those implementations.
And if I can add to that, there are specific recommendations in there that can be included in some of our current capital improvement program projects. And as we prioritize projects in the future, we'll implement those recommendations into those projects as well.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Got a first and a second to adopt resolution number 2023-38. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that passes 4-0.
Thank you.
That brings us to item number 24, Neighborhood Traffic Calming Program.
Thank you again, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. The Neighborhood Traffic Calming Program was adopted by the City Council in 2008, and the program is intended to address safety concerns on our roadways, such as speeding, parking, or other vehicular or pedestrian-related concerns on our residential streets. The program does include our local policy for installing stop signs, speed humps, and it's important to note that this program is primarily driven by the concerns that are reported by residents and also by the feedback received after those measures are implemented. And after they're implemented and then moving forward, the feedback that we receive from the residents. The program is structured to include an ongoing assessment of all those concerns that are generated by the citizens, and approximately once a year, you will see this item on the agenda where staff will provide mitigation measures for some of those concerns that have been received over the past year or so. The program is currently in phase 14. We've completed 13 phases since 2008, and I'd like to introduce our Associate Engineer, Katrina Kunkel, to present the details for phase 14.
Thank you, Fermin. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. In July of 2022, the City Council approved 15 mitigation measures as part of Phase 13 for the program. Those 15 measures have been implemented and staff has received positive feedback from citizens. This slide here shows all of the City Council recommended mitigation measures that have been implemented since 2008. For Phase 14, staff has received and logged 34 concerns. All speed-related concerns are shared with the police department on a monthly basis for enhanced enforcement. Staff has completed 24 field assessments, of which 7 resulted in the recommendations I'm presenting to you this evening. Per the program's guidelines, City Council approval is required to install certain types of mitigation measures. The table on page 643 of the agenda packet includes the concern, staff's recommendation for addressing the concern, and the estimated cost to implement the mitigation measure for each of those 7 concerns. As part of this phase, there are 2 locations where the installation of stop signs were warranted by the program policy. Those locations include 13th Street at Kentucky Avenue and California Street at Acacia Avenue. This phase also includes the removal of the temporary and installation of permanent asphalt speed bumps along Adams Street between Avenue D and Avenue E. This is adjacent to the Inland Leaders Charter School. Other recommendations include installation of additional traffic signage to address the reported concerns. Most of the concerns reported to staff are related to speeding. The mitigation measures that may be recommended for speeding concerns include installation of speed limit signs to increase enforcement, installation of our radar speed feedback signs to increase driver awareness, pavement striping to delineate vehicle travel lanes, which causes a narrowing effect, installation of stop signs, and/or installation of speed humps. It should be noted that concerns for 5 other locations were received during this phase, but they cannot be addressed through the program because of their high vehicular traffic volume. The program only addresses concerns that occur on lower volume residential streets. So these 5 concerns are being reviewed outside of the program, and staff will return at a later date with recommendations as warranted. There is sufficient funding in the available in the adopted fiscal year 24 budget to fund the recommended measures for phase 14 of the program and for the administration costs associated with this phase. With that, staff is recommending that council approve staff's recommendations as listed in the agenda report for this item, and staff is available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Great report. Any comment, any questions? Questions?
So on the highly trafficked areas and stuff, what are you guys thinking on that?
Yeah, so on the locations where the volume is too high to be addressed through our local policy, we go out, we have a contract with a contract traffic engineer, and they will complete it's the California MUTCD warrant, so that is a state designated warrant. We'll have an outside traffic engineer complete those warrants for those locations that cannot be addressed through local policy.
Maybe putting the sheriff out there too.
That always helps, yes. Enhanced enforcement is always step 1.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any recommendation? We got a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
First and a second to approve. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Great presentation.
Thank you.
That brings us to item number 25, the homeless resolution.
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, thank you. I'm going to lead off here, and then I'm going to hand it over to our Public Safety Manager, Trevor Benson, to give the full report. But we're very excited to bring this to you this evening. Back in April, when the council adopted goals for the year, the number 1 goal was bolster public safety. The number 2 goal was create and implement a plan to more proactively address homelessness. So I think, this plan speaks to both of those goals. I've lived in Yucaipa coming up on 9 years now, and in that time, I've personally witnessed a dramatic increase in the number of homeless on our streets. And we have seen crime and other nuisance behaviors that come along with homelessness rise. And so this was, I know, one of the most important initiatives that the City Council wanted to tackle this year. So the gist of this plan is that we're going to be forming what we call a solutions-oriented policing team, or SOP team. This team will consist of 2 sheriff's deputies, a dedicated code enforcement officer, 2 social workers from the San Bernardino County Department of Behavioral Health, and work in cooperation with the city's Public Works Department and our park rangers, all under the direction of our Public Safety Manager. And every day this team's going to go out and they are going to approach every homeless person they see on the streets of Yucaipa, and on the one hand, offer help and support, offer to connect that individual with whatever services they may need, but they will also be there to enforce the laws and to enforce the municipal code. I'd like to read a section from the introduction of this item because I think it summarizes our approach nicely. And it reads, "Being homeless is not a crime, nor should it be a free pass to commit crime. The city will lead with a helping hand and will carefully abide by all applicable laws to ensure that the rights of homeless individuals are upheld. However, the city will not tolerate crime, lawlessness, or nuisance behaviors by anyone, homeless or otherwise. In Yucaipa, being homeless is not an excuse to endanger public health, for example, defecating on a sidewalk or a street, to block the public right-of-way, to intimidate others, for example, aggressively panhandling in front of an ATM, to steal, to be intoxicated or high in public, to trespass, to cause blight, to create a fire danger, to take away the ability of law-abiding citizens to enjoy public facilities, etc. Yucaipa has historically enjoyed a reputation for being a safe, family-friendly community. Unfortunately, rapidly increasing homelessness and associated crimes and nuisances are threatening that lifestyle. This plan aims to reverse that trend, thus preserving a high quality of life for residents. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Trevor Benson.
I don't know how much more I could say. The city managers just gave my presentation pretty much. Hard to beat that.
Sorry.
Sorry, sir. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. Tonight we're here to talk about resolution number 2023-2023-50, adopting the homeless strategic plan, and approve a budget amendment in the amount of $20,000 in the police division of the general fund for FY24 to cover the costs associated with this homeless strategic plan. I have a staff report and some background, but I think it'd be easier just to go through a PowerPoint to highlight this plan for you. So this is our homeless strategic plan. It's a proactive approach to reduce homelessness and related crimes and nuisances in the city of Yucaipa. The number of homeless individuals is reaching epidemic levels in California. And as the city manager said, I think anybody with two eyes could see the homeless population has significantly increased in the city of Yucaipa in the last several years. Some of the causes of homelessness include economic hardship, exorbitant housing costs. With the advent of Prop 47, 57, 62, prison realignment, and a lot of other things, drug possession and use has almost been decriminalized, which has led to the pharmacological mental health epidemic that we have today. This is a complex and growing problem. As you can see in this graph, San Bernardino County has increased over the last 5 years significantly and steadily. In the city of Yucaipa, our last point in time count has the city at roughly 60 homeless. 30 of those are housed. Roughly 30 of those are unhoused. Unhoused is what you see out on the street. So what we want to do, we want to preserve a safe, family-friendly community. The homeless strategic plan is designed to connect the homeless with valuable resources and services, while at the same time aggressively preserving public safety. In essence, we want to keep Yucaipa, Yucaipa. The city, in conjunction with the Yucaipa Police Department, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, has decided to form a solution-oriented policing team, a SOP team. This SOP team is comprised of 2 sheriff's deputies who were previously our quality of life deputies. However, while they're doing quality of life, they're acting independently. Associated with this team, they're going to act as a member of the SOP team and collectively. So 2 sheriff's deputies, which were previously our quality of life deputies, 1 newly hired, very experienced code enforcement officer that we stole from another city, and 2 San Bernardino County Department of Behavioral Health social workers. This team's gonna go out every single day, as the city manager said, and make contact with homeless individuals, try to get services, try to get them off the street. We have a 5-step approach to doing that. The first step is housing and resources. Coordinate and provide housing and other resources for those individuals in need. The second step is going to be our proactive approach, and that's those daily contacts with our SOP team and our SOP team members, which is going to provide rapport and a relationship so they can start to trust our SOP team to accept those resources. The next is going to be health and safety, which is the enforcement of laws and municipal codes. You see on here the reduction of attractants. That's going to be the elimination of drug houses, of drug selling houses, of abandoned and nuisance properties. And then the last one's going to be community effort. It's going to be a robust public outreach, educating the public on what they can do to help versus enable. What we want to do is promote the sign you see in some of our shopping centers that says positive change, not spare change. Some of the public and private partnerships that we have, we're happy to announce that as of June this year, after a lengthy process, including a lot of staff time from the city and a lot of staff time from Set Free Church, the city approved Set Free Church as an emergency shelter, and they have 24 beds for us. Some of the other resources we have is a very professional and established HOPE team in the county. It's run by the Sheriff's Department. That's the Homeless Outreach and Proactive Enforcement Team. And then recently, the Sheriff's Department, in conjunction with the County Fire Department, came up with this COAST team, which is the Community Outreach and Support Team. As the city manager said, being homeless is not a crime, but nor is it a free pass to commit crime. Some of the more recently passed municipal codes are Ordinance 424, which regulates the obstruction of public property, camping, storage of personal property, and aggressive solicitation. Ordinance 425 prohibits hotels and motels from allowing occupants to stay longer than 30 days in a row and no more than 60 days in a 180-day period. And then Ordinance 434, which I believe is going for a second reading, is that regulates vacant structures, implements a vacant structure registration program, and establishes maintenance requirements and board-up standards, and requires a local property management. This solutions-oriented policing team will also focus on educating residents and business owners on the importance of reporting issues. It's really hard for this team or any law enforcement agency to know where to police unless the crimes and the issues are being reported. And unfortunately, here in the city, I know we have some problems, but I think a lot of times some of those issues aren't reported. We're also going to work with community organizations to implement programs and reduce free handouts. And we're going to work with our regional partners such as Omnitrans and County Behavioral Health. On this strategic plan, we have 5 goals. Each one of those goals has a performance measure. Goal number 1 is going to be to reduce the number of people experiencing homelessness in Yucaipa. The performance measures are the number of people experiencing homelessness in Yucaipa, the number of homeless that are taken off the streets, housed in interim housing or stable permanent housing, the number of individuals who have consented to receive homeless services. Goal number 2 is going to be to prevent and mitigate health and public safety impacts on the community stemming from homelessness. The performance measures are the number of calls for service regarding homeless individuals and crime, and the number of known encampments. Goal number 3, prevent Yucaipa residents from falling into homelessness by connecting those at risk with critical services. And those performance measures are the number of people experiencing homelessness in Yucaipa and the number of individuals who have consented to receive homeless services. Goal number 4 is going to ensure that public facilities such as parks remain safe and available for families to enjoy. That's going to be measured through calls for service and the number of known encampments. And finally, the 5th goal is going to be to advocate for systemic changes in the county, state, and federal levels that will strengthen efforts to prevent and reduce homelessness and related crimes. And that's going to be measured by the number of state and federal bills supported or opposed that we have. So that's my presentation on the homelessness strategic plan. I'm here if you have any questions.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if I may?
Sure.
Just to wrap this up. So we've been working on a lot the past few months that has all built up to the adoption of this plan and then the ultimate implementation of this plan. Not long after I started in March, we got a new sheriff's captain. And we still have a fairly new county sheriff. And I believe at the county level and here at our police station, Yucaipa, and at the staff inside the building, you have a determination to tackle this problem that maybe wasn't here before, right? Over the past few months, staff has brought to the council has approved a number of ordinances that Trevor mentioned that put some additional enforcement tools, some teeth into our municipal code, getting ready for this plan. When we put the budget together for this fiscal year, we anticipated, okay, we're gonna need to devote a code enforcement officer just to this issue when we put this team together. And so that was done. We've already gone out and recruited for that position. That person started last week or the week before, has been in training and is ready to go. So what happens from here? If the council approves this plan tonight, then we're going to work towards rolling out this plan very quickly. In the next couple of weeks, we'll do a very public rollout of this plan with some very visible enforcement actions right on the front end. And I think in very short order, this SOP team will be on the street implementing the plan. So we're excited. We feel it's an aggressive plan. We feel it's a balanced plan that balances the need to provide services to those who require them, but also to protect the public health and safety.
Okay, thank you. Okay, questions of staff?
I have a couple.
Go ahead.
Trevor, you mentioned community involvement and education efforts. What does that look like? Is that like a one-on-one with businesses and the public, or are we gonna have some sort of clinic where business owners and businesses in town can meet with you or the team to find out what they should or shouldn't be doing besides just reporting the issues, so that we're broadening our team efforts and they're doing things more educated so that we're not working against each other?
Yeah, I think it's multifaceted. The way we've envisioned it is a social media campaign, as well as our SOP team meeting with community organizations such as the Uptown Business Owners Association, et cetera. And just from calls for service, our SOP team going out and contacting residents or businesses that are experiencing issues with homelessness and educating them through their calls for service.
Okay. The reason I ask is because sometimes people want to help, and sometimes their help in the end game, the long game, it's hindering our efforts in trying to correct some of this issue. It's not that we're trying to pick on anybody. We're trying to help the situation and make it better. But some of the things they may feel they're helping is actually making the team's job harder.
Yeah, we're gonna try to hit it at all angles. I know later in the month we have a meeting with the Civilian Review Board regarding this very same thing. And then next month we have a meeting with the Yucaipa Ministerial Association. So try to tackle it from every angle we can.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilman, if I may too, step 5 in the plan talks about community effort. And one of the sections under that section, the subsections, talks about community organizations such as churches and nonprofits in the community. And what we're hoping to work with them and ask them to focus their efforts on assistance that might produce real lasting change instead of simply giving handouts, because unfortunately just giving handouts inevitably attracts and enables homelessness. We believe that enabling an individual to remain on the streets struggling with addiction or mental health without proper care in unsafe and unsanitary conditions is not compassionate. And so we're hoping to get buy-in from the churches and nonprofits in this community to work with us to provide real help as opposed to just the handouts that attract more of the problem.
Okay.
Where can people get information about this, learning more about how to deal with the homeless if they encounter one, say going to Vaughn's or something? Do you have anything that they can?
There are some pamphlets and stuff like that at the sheriff's office, at the Yucaipa Police Department, but our SOP team is available. All they have to do is call the non-emergency number or stop by the police station, and somebody from the SOP team will be happy to talk to them.
And is the public able to go to the Civil Review Board meeting with you guys, or, how is that? Is it open? to
That's
the
a breakfast meeting that I believe is between city staff and their board members. But I'm sure that at some point in the future, we can have some sort of community meeting or something like that about this, sir.
Just getting the public educated on how to deal with homeless and stuff.
Yes, sir.
That'd be nice to see. 'Cause a lot of people don't, they think that handing out a couple bucks helps out. So
Absolutely.
it's just good education. Be nice to see.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Matt?
Just want to make a comment. This is a big deal. This is huge for Yucaipa, and I'm excited about this. This was one of the #1 things I ran on. It's a big deal for me. I really am excited, and I want to thank Chris, Trevor, thank you for grabbing the ball and running with this thing. This is a big deal. Thank you.
So you're going to be you are our public safety director or public safety manager, and you're going to be managing or overseeing this 5-person crew. Now, do we have buy-in from the behavioral health department?
I'm not going to be managing or supervising it. It's going to be a partnership between myself and the sheriff's department as far as management and supervision. I manage the city employees, and the sheriff's department would manage the sheriff's department employees, but we do it collectively and together. And we do have buy-in from the county behavioral health. We have 2 county behavioral health social workers that are actually stationed here in the Yucaipa Police Department. And they work solely in the Yucaipa area.
So is there going to be an office set up, a location set up where these 5 people reside or report to or report into?
Yes, sir. It's going to be at the police station.
Police station?
Yes, sir.
So basically, the sheriff's department's going to take the lead on this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, I agree. I'm excited about it. I just hope we can do something with it and make it work, because, if we don't do something about this, and a lot of people have a lot of different views about this, but the bottom line is you enable someone to defecate on your streets. I've been to LA a couple of times lately, and what used to be a clean sidewalk is now public feces everywhere, and it's disgraceful. It's a beautiful city, but it's turning into a crap hole, literally, and I don't want that to happen here. It's a big deal for us. So anyway, do I have a motion to approve this?
I'll make a motion.
I've got one more question. Can we talk a little bit about the DA that we possibly will be hiring to take care of some of these issues?
So it's certainly a work in progress, looking at how exactly we can beef up the prosecution of some of these city misdemeanors. I do know that the Sheriff's Department has provided me with a contact in the District Attorney's Office. We're looking to setting up a meeting with them. If for whatever reason we're unable to come to an agreement with the District Attorney's Office, I can assure you that our office and our capacity as city attorney is capable of prosecuting those misdemeanors as well. So I think it's just like Trevor talked about. I think having cohesion, working together, is the best path forward, getting everyone on the same page. But at the end of the day, we are going to be ramping up the prosecution criminally of these offenses. As Trevor mentioned, we are not targeting people because they are homeless. We are targeting public nuisance behaviors that threaten the health and safety of the community.
You good?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion? I have a motion from Chris.
I'll make a motion.
Have a first?
I'll second.
Have a second? First and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that brings us to item number 26. For 26, I have, and don't let me forget that I've got 3 speakers for item number 26. I'm going to put them right here. So, item 26.
That would be me. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council, item 26 for your consideration tonight is a resolution adopting general rules and procedures for the conduct of commissions and committees here in the city of Yucaipa, as well as reestablishing committees, their functions, and setting their meeting dates and times. On August 1st, city staff met with the city manager to discuss the various standing and ad hoc committees of the city. We went down the list and discussed each committee, their purpose, and the frequency of the meetings. We determined that the list should be revised to ensure consistency and relevancy. Changes to the list included the addition of a standing committee, the addition of an ad hoc committee, changing certain committees from standing to ad hoc committees, and the dissolution of certain committees which are no longer in use. It's important to note that current memberships for all committees will remain the same with the exception of the Economic Development Advisory Committee, whose entire organizational structure changed. The EDAC committee has representatives from different organizations. Under the new structure, representatives from those different organizations will apply under the category that applies to them, and applications will be submitted to the City Council for your appointment. Our Housing and Economic Development Analyst, Ryan Miller, contacted the previous EDAC committee members to inform them of the new committee structure and the opportunity they will have to apply should council approve this item tonight. During this review process, staff also looked at Chapter 2.12 of the Yucaipa Municipal Code related to the Park and Recreation Commission. Their powers and duties as outlined in the code are more in line with an advisory committee than a commission. In addition to the changes being proposed, staff worked with the City Attorney's Office to put together general rules and procedures for the conduct of commissions and committees. Tonight, staff is recommending that the City Council adopt Resolution Number 2023-46, approving general rules and procedures for the conduct of commissions and committees in the City of Yucaipa and reestablishing City Council committees, committee functions, and setting committee meeting dates and times, and waive full reading and introduce by title only ordinance number 436. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
And Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, would you mind if I just added on to the end of that?
Sure, go ahead.
So I think one of the things that we've really endeavored to do over the past 9 months is increase transparency in city government. How does government function? What are these committees? What do they do? How are people appointed to them? I think many of these boards, commissions, and committees have been created with excellent intention. It's not unusual for this to happen. Cities have to regularly go through their books and say, okay, you know, we've created these 10 committees. We have 10 different ways of appointing people. It's healthy to look at that and say, okay, we're going to have a unified structure for how boards, committees, and commissions meet. What are the rules? How is a chairperson appointed? How is a quorum determined? One of the questions that our office had received was some of these advisory committees have 2 members of the council who attend as representatives but are non-voting members. Are those council members, do they count towards a quorum? You know, rather than research all those questions on a one-off basis, it's better to have all of the answers in an easily accessible document rather than having to go to 10 different places to find where all the boards and committees and commissions of the city are. It's helpful to have all of that information in one document rather than having different boards and commissions that have different rules that staff has to know, that the committees have to know, that heaven forbid an attorney has to know. It's easy to have all those things in one document. That doesn't mean this document is sacrosanct. I think just like the previous rules and regulations that the City Council considered for itself about 6 months ago, I think it'd be perfectly healthy to look at this and see if there are items here that, you know, maybe you want to update and change. And then lastly, I did want to just touch on what the city clerk mentioned, the difference in naming commission versus committee. No duties and functions of the Parks and Recreation, formerly a commission, if you approve this now a committee, have changed. I think the naming is simply in recognition of what their role is here at the city. They are an advisory committee. They are advisory to the city. Whereas when you're talking about commissions, you think of something like the Planning Commission. You're talking about a board of the city, a group of the city that has actual decision-making, final decision-making authority. Your Planning Commission has the ability to approve as a final body a great number of items. None of your other advisory committees have that ability. That's why you have the distinction in nomenclature. Truthfully, it's more of a style point to get these things right, but we figured since we were going through it, might as well be accurate in the naming. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, so any questions of staff? No questions? No questions? Okay, so I've got 3 speakers for this before we discuss it. The first is Kathy Sellers. Kathy, if you want to come forward and once again tell us where you're from and what's on your mind, please.
Kathy Sellers, District 1. I just want to make a short statement. I emailed to you all, but I missed the deadline. That agenda item 26 is concerning. It appears that control is being established over the manner in which our city committees operate, and the freedom of speech of those serving on them will be under scrutiny and control of city council. I urge caution on voting on yet another manipulation of our longstanding ordinances already in place. And if I'm not reading it properly, I apologize, but it is a little bit concerning about members on these committees that might be taken to task because they become outspoken and don't fall into the line. So I'm hoping that's not what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you for your input there, Kathy. We appreciate it. Hanson Wong, next.
Hanson Wong, 35150 Court Street, Yucaipa, California. So I commend our city attorney and our city clerk for trying to standardize how our committees operate and so on. Although there are a few things that, at least to me, are confusing, I think one of the reasons is that there wasn't, as far as I could find, a previous document that outlined all of these areas. There were certain resolutions from the city council and so on. So one of the items that confused me a little bit is the wording of who needs to approve these positions. What I've seen in the past, and I haven't read it anywhere, was that a member of the committee that was appointed by the city council was automatic, whereas the other member that just wrote themselves in to say that they want to be on the committee were voted on and needed to be approved by the city. And I didn't see that differentiation there. I don't know whether you really want it or not. I understand the need for civility and quorum, but I also would be concerned if the wording of it was used to remove dissenters or people who have a different point of view. I feel that in our communities, we should have all kinds of view, we should consider all kinds of view, and that we shouldn't be able to remove people just because they disagree. So I think we need to seriously look at that. I don't think that it was transparent enough from the beginning for anyone to compare prior documents to this current document. I don't know if that's still possible, or you're just going to vote on it tonight. But those are just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hanson. We appreciate your comments. Okay, that brings us to Colleen Wong.
(35150) Court Street in Yucaipa. I too am concerned about some of these new rules and regulations. It seems like if appointments require a certain number of votes, how can anyone that opposes the current cartel of the three of you that were up for recall, how would I think you would all agree that they are definitely civically minded. How would any of those people serve this city in any of the committees? There's an awful lot of positions out there. They need an awful lot of help with a lot of their projects, make a city day, other things. And I think that if you are held to a certain number of people required to approve someone's appointment, there have been moves in the past to have certain people thrown off committees because they didn't agree with those three individuals. I think there's been a lot of issues. It's just like right now, Anna is prevailing in her argument, and it's just a maneuver because we know that no one can recover court costs if they haven't prevailed. And I think that's just an example of disagreements between individuals in the public and on certain committees and appointment positions.
Thank you, Colleen. Okay, so that's all the public comment I had. Do we have any comments or want to have some discussions about this?
To be honest with you, I didn't dig into this real good, you know, because I had this to dig into too. So, I'm gonna have a hard time voting on this one. I mean, I don't know if we can table this to the next, to where I can dig into it a little bit better and stuff. I mean, that's just my own point.
Okay, so,
To answer the Councilman Venable's comment, yeah, it's absolutely the council's prerogative to table this to the next council meeting if that's your desire. I don't believe there's anything that's particularly time sensitive here, but up to the council.
okay, so on the addition of a standing committee, I did actually delve into it.
Did you?
Yeah, I
That's
did,
good.
of course, yeah. So we currently have 42 or 41 mobile home parks in Yucaipa, but we do not have any owners that live here. And it's going to be impossible to have this standing committee for mobile homes if none of the park owners can be on this committee because they don't live here. And I don't think it's appropriate at all to have a manager or someone representing the park owner on this committee. This committee consists of, this is an important, mobile homes are an important part of our housing element. And I think if we're going to do this as far as the standing committee, we have to have park owners, a couple of park owners, because they represent a different perspective than the residents that live in these parks.
Mayor Pro Tem, the language of the resolution makes it clear that the residency requirement is general unless a more specific rule in the particular committee takes effect. I think we can make it even more clear to address your point. On page 718 of the backup, looking at the members of the Mobile Home Park Committee, it says under members, 2 Yucaipa mobile home park owners or owner representatives, we could put in parentheses, who shall not be required to be a resident of the city of Yucaipa. I think that would potentially address the concern you've raised.
I think that's important. I think sending a representative of the owner, by the time you interpret what they think and say to the next person to bring to the committee, whatever that input is going to lose something in translation. And I think this is such an important issue that the park owners, I don't know how many there are, but I know there's several that own a lot of parks. I think those individuals ought to have the opportunity to be on this committee. In fact, I think we should insist on it.
And I think if you're doing that, you probably want to add just a similar clarification on the EDAC, the Economic Development Advisory Committee. I think that the language there was sufficient. If someone had asked me, do these people have to be a resident? I would say no, but since we are going through and being very precise, I think we can add a similar parenthetical to that one, because you're looking at, for example, a representative from the school district. School district includes City of Calamasa, unincorporated county areas. They should be able to appoint somebody within their service area to that committee. So you may want to include that language on that one as well, Mayor Pro Tem.
Why don't somebody clarify? Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Addition of the ad hoc committee for the community activity grant application. We did in fact discuss that in public. We did in fact agree as a council that we would change that process to a committee that would then evaluate who's worthy or who should get the activity grant money. And we would take that away from the city council at a meeting to sort of lay it all out in public. We did agree to that. So I'm all in on that. I think that's a good idea. The council would still make that decision once the recommendations from the ad hoc committee had been made. I think that's fantastic. And I'm still respecting your idea. I just want to make sure that we get this out there for the public. And maybe to clarify the difference between an ad hoc standing committees, which should be ad hoc committees. Maybe clarify for not only the council, but also for the public, the difference between a standing committee and an ad hoc committee. I know we've talked about that, but I'd like to hear that in layman's terms so that we can understand exactly what that means.
Absolutely. So a standing committee is a committee that has okay, you said, I was about to go into lawyer language. I'm really sorry. A standing committee is a committee that deals with an issue that is continuous, right? So, for example, Parks and Recreation Committee. We have parks, we will have parks tomorrow, we will have parks next week, we will have parks next year, we will have parks 10 years from now. And so there's continuing, we call it subject matter jurisdiction, whereas continuing issues that need to be addressed on a regular basis with that. When you're talking about, for example, the Library Ad Hoc Committee, we have a current community discussion about the construction of a new library. Once those issues are talked about and we find the funding sources and the new library is on its way to being built or is built, the issue is done. We no longer need to discuss the funding and the construction of the library. And so an ad hoc committee is a committee that deals with a one-time issue. Now, it may take a while for that issue to get resolved, but once that issue is resolved, you no longer need to meet any further. So it's not a continuing subject matter jurisdictional issue. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, does that make sense to everyone? Then standing committees, which should be ad hoc committees. Casablanca House Advisory Committee, Five Winds Ranch Improvement Advisory Committee, Public Finance Authority Board, EIFD, Solid Waste Committee. So those are currently ad hocs, and they should be standing. Is that right, or did I get that backwards?
You got that backwards.
I got it backwards. Okay, so clarify, please.
So they're currently, under our current structure, they are standing committees. They should be ad hoc
They
committees.
should be ad hoc, okay. Does that make sense to everybody up here? The difference between a standing committee and an ad hoc committee? An ad hoc committee, I was on the ad hoc committee for the YPAC. Myself and Greg Bogue were on that committee. Is that right? Ad hoc committee, yes. And we attended all the meetings. And once that project was built, that ad hoc ceased to be, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good. I'm just trying to make sure I understand it. That way I can explain it. And then the dissolution of committees, ad hoc committees, Public Arts Committee, CHC ad hoc, City of Calamasa ad hoc council committee. So all of those need to be dissolved. And that's part of this recommendation.
Correct.
Okay, so you want to go ahead and move this then to the next meeting? We're not having a meeting the 1st of October because it's Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day or whatever the flip you want to call it day. So we're going to have a meeting at the end of October, so we want to bring this back then. Is that agreed?
Yeah.
Yes?
I'll make a motion. Do I make a motion to that, to move it to the next?
Yes, to table to October 23rd.
I'll make a
Okay.
motion to table.
Made a motion to table it. You got a second?
I'll second.
We got a first and a second. Any further discussion? Did I get the speakers? We're still on 26, never mind. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. That moves us to item number 27, and I have 2 speakers for 27 that I don't want to overlook, so stop me if I do, please.
All right, thank you all, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members. This before you is consideration of ordinance number 429. It is a ordinance that's proposed to kind of streamline the provisions of the previously adopted ordinance number 344, which was the implementation of the Mobile Home Park 3 Overlay District, which was, as part of this, is to implement the city's cycle housing element. So, just kind of a bit of history. In 2016, the city of Yucaipa adopted Mobile Home Park 3 Overlay District. Just kind of for a frame of reference, the city of Yucaipa has 42 different mobile home parks, so all of them fall under a mobile home park overlay under the city's general plan. We had historically a mobile home park overlay District 2, which is all our age-restricted or senior living mobile home parks. And then as part of the comprehensive general plan update, we added a third one, which covered 7 different mobile home parks, and it really was to help address maybe the conversion of those into higher density housing. Part of it was an assessment of those parks and the conditions that were in is that if you were, as a park owner, to do the renovations for those mobile homes or those parks, the cost of that as it gets passed on to the residents as part of their rent increases would essentially price all those improvements out from the residents that live there, just because the conditions of those parks had reached a point where significant investment was needed to really bring them up to safe standards. The other districts, Mobile Home Park 1 and 2, was really preservation. How do we maintain that those parks as they age? Some of them are over 50 years old. Make sure that their infrastructure is in place to make sure that it's still safe living. But the Mobile Home Park 3 was a way to maybe go, okay, this is maybe not the long-term solution for these sites, and how does this get transitioned? And so as part of the Mobile Home Park 3 district, the City Council did adopt ordinance number 344, which established the conversion standards for these mobile home parks. As part of that process, it established a density of what could be built there as 16 dwelling units per acre, but could be modified to up to 24 units per acre. So if you are a property owner on that, you actually don't really know what you can build, because you have a whole separate process that you need to go through in order to figure out exactly what you could build on that with the conversion of it. But somewhere along between 16 and 24 units is what you could do. So this brings us to the city's housing element for the sit cycle, so 2021 to 2029, that was adopted by the City Council and certified by the state last year. And really it was as part of a philosophy is we have to accommodate 2,866 dwelling units as part of the housing element. Figure out how do we plan for that. City Council said we have a lot of key priorities already in the books in our general plan. We want to see certain housing opportunities come to fruition, some improvements to different parts of the city and the community, including the Uptown District as well as the mobile home parks. And so the discussion focused on, okay, how do we further encourage a program we already have on the books and get credit for as part of meeting the RENA or the 2866 units that we need to build. And so the state's provisions was, okay, remove some of that ambiguity of what you can do. If you can build up to 24 units per acre, just make that as what you're allowed to do. You don't have to guess on what would be allowed and going through kind of a political process on that. And then also streamlining the provisions so that way, if you know exactly what the rules are, you design a residential project to that, you know that that residential project would be approved. And so really the update as part of this ordinance is to modify the approval process of a residential project following the conversion of that park through the city's land use compliance review application, making sure it complies with the city's design guidelines for the RM24 district, and then also setting the base density at that 24 units per acre. All the other provisions as part of that mobile home park conversion ordinance stays in effect. So as part of a conversion of a mobile home park, full-on relocation impact specialist has to go through, assess what is the condition of the housing stock that's there, what is the cost to relocate these people, where would they go, can they move the coaches that they have, do they need to buy them out? All those provisions still stay in effect. It really is just the housing project side. That process is much more clear-cut and dry, and the city is able then to include that as part of our housing element. And then certainly was, as part of the direction was, because we had established this with the 2016 general plan, was how do we help kind of make sure that that provision doesn't get lost and we're not allocating housing other places where maybe we had something on the books that we should try to encourage in the first place. Now this ordinance itself was reviewed at the Plan Commission meeting of September 6th. The commission, since we did have a few new commissioners following the adoption of the housing element, really just wanted to kind of know about the process. We did confirm that this does not change all the components of the relocation and that conversion steps. Those are all spelled out in the code. It really is just the residential side that gets clarified and streamlined. And so the relocation and the relocation impact reports and relocation plans, those provisions all stay the same. We did have some concerned residents about this ordinance that wanted a little bit more detail, really didn't quite understand what was going on. And so we did hold a town hall meeting at the police station on September 21st, 2023 to really discuss what is occurring with this, what it is doing, what it's not doing. And so really there's a few different key components. One is that the mobile home park conversion process has been in place since 2016. It is a voluntary process by the park owner. It's not city initiated. We're not saying, hey, you need to do this. We're just saying this is what the process is. Secondly, it is a ministerial approval process for that conversion for the residential side. And then that they still need to comply with all the existing procedures in the code. And I do want to note as well, as part of the housing element, so the housing element addresses a few different needs on the city's level. One is how do we build or accommodate, facilitate the development of housing that meets the regional housing needs allocation. But the other side of it is how do we provide and preserve housing stock for existing residents as well. And so even though we are talking about the 7 of the city's 42 mobile home parks within the Mobile Home Park 3 overlay district, the 35 other parks are covered under other policies of the housing element which deal with the preservation of those parks, making sure that we can provide resources, find grants, find other opportunities to make sure that those sites maintain in good condition, that way the residents that live there live in quality housing, that we don't want them to live in a place that is so devoid of infrastructure or such a liability that they're really in unsafe living conditions. And so that's one thing just to kind of note is that we do have, in addition to the relocation process that is voluntary, we also do have other policies about the preservation of our housing stock, including our existing mobile homes as well. So that would include the mobile home parks in the District 1 and District 2, the senior district. And so with that, the Plan Commission did conduct a public hearing and recommended that the City Council conduct a public hearing tonight and approve the project. This is part of program number 8 of the city's housing element, which we do have to show compliance with, and then that the environmental review for the addendum to the 2016 General Plan EIR covered the environmental impacts of this, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
So item number 27 is a public hearing. I failed to open the public hearing. I apologize for that. I should have opened the public hearing. You did a magnificent job of explaining that. But so this is a public hearing, and that was staff presentation. There is no applicant, right? There is no applicant here in the case of this public hearing?
There's no specific applicant, just the city on behalf of meeting the housing element, so I'm the applicant.
Okay, so then that brings us to public comments. So is there any questions of staff in reference to this item? No? Okay, so that brings us to public comment. Mark Westwood, you're up. Tell us where you live and what's on your mind.
First of all, gracias a todos mis compañeros residentes del Parque de Casas. Muy bien por venir esta noche. Ojalá hubiera una aptitude para usted. What did I just say? They have the same problem here. A lot of the people in the back didn't understand you didn't understand probably what I said. They don't understand what you're saying. I'm Mark Westwood. I'm a mobile home park resident. I helped, by the way, moderate that town hall meeting, and I thank Jennifer, and I thank Ben, and I thank also Madeline Jordan for being there and explaining it to us. Did you hear how fast Ben talks? Wow, he talks really fast. And, a lot of these people are just swimming trying to figure this out. Yucaipa was built from mobile home foundations up. There are 41 mobile home parks in Yucaipa with 4,600 registered residents, 70% which are high propensity voters that have voted in the last 3 elections. We all know there's really even more because the mobile home community is the last bastion of affordable housing. We talked about the homeless. Number 2 way to cure homelessness is to make sure there's affordable housing and that we can put them in housing. We don't want to create an atmosphere where there's not affordable housing. I went through those mobile home parks, gentlemen, and I'll tell you right now, there were some that weren't that great, but not all of them were just really bastions of unsafe living conditions. YMRA, Yucaipa Mobile Home Residents Association, is kind of in a disarray right now with the death of Shirley Dalton, rest her soul. She was the YMRA president, and they haven't even had a memorial service yet. YMRA is going through a big adjustment right now. Yeah, they're just now establishing a mobile home park committee on tonight's agenda, by the way. You guys were trying to work on that out. You haven't done that yet. Out of respect to more than the 4,600 residents in the YMRA, out of respect to these people that are trying to just figure this out, because you had a planning commission meeting on the 6th. You put it in the Yucaipa News Mirror it was seen on the 13th for the first time, the legal notice. That was the only way these residents were going to find out about this. A lot of them are Spanish speaking. They don't know what's going on. And all these things kind of contribute to the fact that I'm going to politely ask you to please table this ordinance or please slow it down and not vote on it tonight, because there's so many aspects coming together. We've heard people in the beginning of the meeting tonight, very upstanding community members that have participated in the civic process, say they don't trust you. Well, there's been a lot of distrust in the community created over the recent events. And that's why, as Jennifer Crawford asserts, this has been up since 2016. Mr. Matlock, Ben Matlock said, oh, yeah, we've been talking about it since 2016. This is the draft ordinance. 27 pages, gentlemen, 27 pages. How do you expect all these people here tonight to be able to understand this with things like EIR, CEQA, RIR, and all those kinds of things? I know my time's up. Could you just extend it a little bit because these
No,
people
sir.
can't speak for me?
No, sir. That brings us to
I asked that you
Joeva
table it,
M.
sir. Thank you.
Peabody. Joeva M. Peabody? Did I say that right? I apologize.
I got a microphone and a radio station. Don't worry. That was a bad.
You don't have another speaker for me? Go ahead. Go ahead, tell us where you're from and what's on your mind.
I'm from 11050 Yucaipa Street, Space 20, Lakeview, Mobile. I've got some questions that are concerns that are probably concerns of other folks also, and it's from after watching the live stream or the recording of the Planning Commission. My first thing is talk about calculations for relocation. Will these calculations include, in addition to various moving costs, which are set out, be also based on the person's income, number of people living in the mobile home, how long have they lived in the mobile, are they being relocated from, their age, their pets, how much they have in non-furniture personal items, will the new place be able to hold all their personal property, and the person's ability to adjust to relocation, such as now there's more people around, there's more noise, there's more traffic, and now their safety feels compromised. That's one of my concerns, which is, I gave the lady questions. My other question and concern is the city of codes allowed for relocation within a 15-mile radius, including costs to move furniture and personal belongings, first and last rent at the new location. What if the rent after the first month isn't affordable for the relocated person, or it gets raised so that it cannot be paid, and the mobile park from which they are being relocated was the only place the person can actually afford? So you move them out and then they raise the rent, now where are they gonna go? And then my last concern, which I just saw when I saw the posting this morning, regarding the change to make the ordinance 429 and 344 addendum exempt from environmental review. What procedures will be used to check and make sure there are no changes to the mobile park property being sold that might now affect the environment with a new multi-use project? We've had earthquakes, we've had mudslides. If the last review was done in 2016, has that property changed, and do we need to have another environmental impact survey done? And those are my concerns.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your questions. If you have those questions, you can address those to the city manager or to the city clerk, and she will be able to give you the information you need.
I did, I gave them.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, that's Oscar's next. So does that mean you don't want to speak? No. Okay, so Oscar doesn't want to speak, so he waives that. So then Ruth Garcia.
Hello, good evening. My name is Ruth Garcia, and
Speak into the mic, please, so I can hear you.
hi, I'm Ruth Garcia, and we are located on the California Street Mountain View Mobile Home Park. The only issue that I feel we are all having is regarding that we don't feel as though we were educated regarding what was going to happen. There's rumors that it's going to be teared down, that we're going to get moved, but in all honesty, we don't know what's really going on. So we would just like to be educated regarding what's going on before everything happens. Also, as the first speaker came and said, there is a language barrier that we would like to be able to get over so that more people that live in that community are able to understand what is actually going on. And if it is voluntary, for us to actually know whether that's something we would like to do or not. So I would like to ask if we could table this as well. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we don't have an applicant rebuttal, do we, or do we not? You do. Go ahead.
I'm not the applicant rebuttal. I just wanted to clarify a couple points because I've been on staff and I was a part of this group that was comprised of city employees, council, and some people that lived in the parks and represented YMRA went along with this. And it was we walked around and toured the parks back in 2014, 15, came to council several times and adopted this plan. The RIR is a relocation impact report, and as Ben stressed in his presentation tonight, maybe some people didn't hear it, this has nothing to do with that report. This only changes the ability to aware of one of the 7 parks. They are Westwind, Mountain View, Melody Lane, Hideaway, Hitching Post, Las Casitas, and Holiday Mobile Rancho. If those park owners are interested, they have to do this very intensive relocation impact report. That then comes to the city for review and consideration, and it accounts for, and this was very involved back then, how the people that live in those parks would be relocated. And we were very detailed, and we listened to the concerns back then of we don't want people from Yucaipa to have to be forced someplace else in another community, but we had to at least allow the 15-mile radius. We feel with 42 mobile home parks, one of which is Yucaipa Land Yacht Harbor, they're not under rent control, but there are 42 mobile home parks in this community. We have enough parks to accommodate if and only if a park owner who owns that business, the property, right? Only if they are interested and they can find that it's best in their interest to redevelop that space. The remaining parks, if we had a natural disaster, God forbid something like that happened in Calamasa came through, and it touched the other parks not involved in these 7s, the only thing that could be redeveloped there is another mobile home. That's a part of our overlay. So I just wanted to clarify, because I think a lot of people got information that caused fright and concern, and we do recognize that, but nothing tonight is about anybody selling a park. We even had a park owner come to the townhouse that Mark put on, claiming, and they're one of the 7, he has no interest in selling his park. This is only triggered if there's interest by the 7 park owners to sell the park. Then it goes through the RIR, and then it comes to you ultimately. And there will be experts in the field to even review that report. This is just changing the ability from going 16 units to the acre to 24 units to the acre. They know that before so that the developers can even run the numbers to even see if it's feasible. So we just wanted to clarify to everybody, and maybe we can work on meeting with residents in Mountain View and Melody Lane that can speak Spanish to provide this information again to them so that they know, but this has nothing to do with any mobile home park today that we are familiar with that even has an interest to convert their park to another use.
I appreciate you saying all that, because I was going to have a spiel once we're to that point. I was going to make some comments in reference to that, because I'm the only member of this council that was there. And you have some comments to make?
No, I think it was, I'll let you continue. It was just, the project itself is regarding kind of the residential side. As you guys know, with the state law, the Housing Accountability Act, the discretion that city councils and plan commissions have on non-objective standards residential as a purpose to deny a project is very tough, and so this really streamlines that. Everything else as part of the ordinance remains.
Okay,
so Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
What's that?
And Ben, please correct me if I say something inaccurate here, but I think one of the important things to keep in mind as well is that this plan was included last year when the council adopted the updated the housing element update, right? So when the council approved that document and sent it to Sacramento, and that plan was approved and certified by the state, this was part of that housing element update. So we, the council said, yes, we're going to do this last year. And there are a number of things like this that will be coming forward, that items that were included in that plan that the council adopted last year, that now the state has approved and certified that plan, we have to now go and implement. We have to actually do what we said we were going to do. And this is one of those things. So I think that's an important element of this to remember as well.
Yeah. And to add to that, the idea of leveraging existing general plan policies in the housing element was actually covered from 2 councils ago in 2020. And so even former longtime council members gave direction to staff as part of the housing element to leverage those existing programs, and it spanned upon them for the housing element.
Okay, so I'll go ahead then, and are you good? Are you good? You're good. Okay, good. I'll go ahead then and close the public hearing and open it up for council discussion. As I said, I'm the only council member up here that was here in 2016 when all of this came about, or when all of this was discussed and decided upon. And so basically the previous city manager brought this to us back in 2016, saying that there were 7 parks in Yucaipa that were typically run down really bad. Remember that. 7 parks in Yucaipa that were typically run down really, really bad. So what we did is we organized and we brought a bus over, and some members of the mobile home community, some members of the city council, city staff got on this bus, and we drove around to all 7 parks. And we looked at the parks, and we tried to assess what the condition was of the park. Folks, I don't know who got you all wound up, but all I would say in reference to this item is no problema, because I promise you the cost, we approved the possible conversion of 7 parks if in fact the owner had the financial wherewithal to buy everyone's coach at market value and then pay to move their family to a different apartment or location. And the cost to do that is so cost prohibitive. When we approved this, I said out loud, this is never going to happen. And folks, I'm going to tell you right now, you got your panties in a wad for nothing, because promise, this is never going to happen. The cost to do this is so high that no park owner is going to relinquish their rent base to try to do this. It's never going to happen. Now, my understanding is that we have to, this is part of our, if you don't stop talking, I'm going to have this man right here remove you from this assembly. Do you understand? If you don't, then I'll have it done. Okay, well then stop talking. It's not your turn to talk. The protocol is you had public speaking time, we have our time. That's the protocol. Love it or not, that's the way it is. Reality is that I understand from reading this that because the mobile homes were an integral part of our housing element, that in order to justify it being part of our housing element, that we had to include this 24 or 16 to meet some of our RENA numbers. Is that right, wrong, or indifferent?
That is correct. We have to provide a ministerial process for 24 units per acre.
Right. So all this decision tonight is, this has already been decided. This decision is to go ahead and allow, if someday, 50 years from now, when we're all probably in wheelchairs, if someone has the money to do this, it gives them the opportunity to basically do it at a reasonable rate, but they still have to buy your coach, move your family. And as I said, folks, this is never going to happen. Do you realize for 100 coaches what it would cost a developer or a property owner to relocate that project? That would cost him $25 million. $16 million. And then he's got to build something different, which will cost, by then, $40 million. It's never going to happen. That's my prediction. And I'll go on record as saying that, as I did in 2016. So the bottom line is, All we're doing is just approving part of our housing element that would give a park owner, the 7 park owners, or in the case of a disaster, the park owner, the ability to build something different, but at the same time, they've still got to take care of you, the mobile home renter. We value the mobile homes in Yucaipa. It's a very important part of our affordable housing element. We're not going to kick anybody out. We're not going to relocate anybody. We're not going to do anything that will hurt you or your family. That's not our intention. So I've said all that. Anyone else?
The problem I have is some of these people, I don't think understand because they're Spanish speaking. I wish we had someone here that could speak to them and explain this thing in detail. That's how I feel about it. I think that I wouldn't have a problem pushing this thing out so these people could, at least understand what's going on. And that's just my opinion.
And I agree with that statement completely, but I will tell you this. I read this packet. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I do understand English, and I did read the packet, and I've got 11 years of experience from this particular item, and I still don't completely understand it. So trying to understand this ordinance or any ordinance the way they're written is very difficult for people. So.
Well, the problem I have, the problem I have is these people have no clue because they don't understand, or they don't understand English. And that's the problem I have. I think someone should explain this to them in Spanish so they understand this in detail. And that's just how I feel about it. I mean, I know it's tough to go through that, and it's hard to understand some of that, but some of these people have no idea.
Mayor Pro Tem, something the council could do, obviously we want to be accessible in explaining what the city's planning on doing here. You could close the public hearing but continue the item to the next meeting. Closing the public hearing means we won't have another unlimited amount of public comment. But in the meantime, you could direct city staff to provide explanatory materials in both English and Spanish, so that, if there are individuals who are more comfortable getting that information in Spanish, it could be provided to them in an accessible way.
You guys agree with that?
I'm good with that.
I am good with that.
Okay, so then, based on that, do we not vote on this to accept it now, or do we move it to the next?
So the motion would be to close the public hearing, but continue the item to the next regular meeting.
Okay, so do I have a motion to close the public hearing and move the item to the next organized meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Got a
I'll second.
first? Second?
Yeah.
Yeah, second, got a first and second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that dealt with number 27. That brings us to item number 28. Is 28 a public hearing also?
Yes, 28 is a public hearing as well.
Okay, so 28 is a public hearing also. So I'll go ahead then and open up the public hearing. Mr. Matlock, you're up.
I will have Maddie Jordan
Okay, I'm
do
sorry.
the presentation.
You're up.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members. On behalf of the City of Yucaipa, I present item number 28 for your consideration of ordinance number 432, which would authorize the processing of lot merger applications for projects that span multiple contiguous parcels, and modify the City of Yucaipa Development Code, again, to comply with the city's adopted housing element. As Ben had previously noted in his presentation, the 6th cycle housing element was adopted and certified last year and identifies programs and policies to help streamline housing opportunities to meet the city's RHNA. Program number 21, identified on the screen, specifically identifies the need to update the code to allow lot mergers when a project is proposed across multiple parcels, which would facilitate a simplified component of the entitlement process related to future residential projects. In the example on the screen, 3 lots are proposed to be merged into one, and in order to be merged, it is important to note that all lots must be held by the same ownership and that at least one of the 7 potential conditions of approval necessary for processing a lot merger application are required as identified in the code. So to comply with program number 21 in the housing element, condition H would be added to the code through the proposed ordinance 432 to read that a lot that is associated with a residential, commercial, and/or mixed-use project that proposes a development spanning at least one other contiguous parcel and which has either an approved land use entitlement application or approved building permit application for said parcels could be a condition that would allow for the processing of a lot merger application. Ordinance number 432 was presented at the regular Planning Commission meeting of September 6, 2023, with the commissioners expressing support for the update, specifically noting that it will streamline future development projects. This could be particularly relevant in the city's Uptown Business District specific plan, where there are a lot of smaller lots and greater opportunities for a larger project to span across multiple parcels. The Planning Commission ultimately recommended Ordinance 432 for City Council approval. I'm available if there are any questions, but really this is just a simple update to simplify the process for potential projects down the road and again comply with the city's adopted housing element program number 21. So staff recommends approval of ordinance number 432, and that is also exempt from further environmental review, consistent with an addendum to the 2016 General Plan Environmental Impact Report that was prepared for the housing element last year.
Any questions of staff? No? Applicant rebuttal, no? No public comments? No? I'll close the public hearing. You guys want to vote?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Got a motion? Got a second? First and a second. Any further discussion?
And I'll read into the record the ordinance.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
So ordinance number 432 is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Yucaipa, California, amending Development Code Section 83.040701 of Chapter 4, Division of Land Procedures of Division 3 Procedures of the Yucaipa Development Code relating to authorizing the processing of lot merger applications for projects that span multiple contiguous parcels.
Okay, thank you. Excellent report. Excellent presentation. Okay, so we got a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that brings us to number 29, which is the comprehensive user fee schedule update. Public hearing also. I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing.
Good evening again. Item 29 is the comprehensive user fee schedule update for fiscal year 24. Each year we go through the update for the user fees. Typically that update is in the off years, it's a CPI increase. Like this year, it's a CPI increase. That percentage is 4.6% from last year's fees. Periodically, we do a cap. The last base year for our cap was 2019. And so next year, we're going to revisit that cap, get a new cap, and also do a comprehensive user fee study as well for next year. This year is an off year in that we're taking last year's fees, applying the CPI increase to them, and that's what's included in your packet. One significant change this year is with development services. We have changed with this update, we're changing from a deposit-based process to a fee-based. And so on that change document that you have, you'll see not applicable for several of those fees that are now applicable. And again, that's because we're changing from a deposit-based process that the city has used for a long time and has created issues for us to a fee-based that we're anticipating will cause a lot less issues going forward. With that, you do have the old and new user fee studies in your packet, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions of staff?
Yeah, I have a question. On the, let's see here, where is it? The temporary sign, why is that so much? I'm getting multiple complaints on that. So I'd like to know why is that so expensive?
Yeah, so the process with, the way these fees are established is based on a study that's performed. And what that study entails is for a typical request for, or a service that's provided, how much staff time does it take? What does it cost the city to work through that process? And so with all of these fees, that's what's done with the comprehensive user fee study. We go through all of these to say how much time is going to take. Do we have any other costs that we need that we need to recoup through this process? And so as part of that process, when we were looking at that specific one, similar to all the others, it took so much staff time. And so then that staff time is the basis for what the fee could be. We come to council. Historically, over the years, council has capped what those amounts were. So ultimately, the general fund would kind of supplement the cost of fees. A couple years ago, council made the determination to no longer do that. And so now we charge the full amount of the anticipated fee based on the study. And then in the off years, that fee is increased by CPI that we get as well. So that's the basis for that fee, similar to pretty much all the other fees that are included in that. So that one is not calculated in any special way. That's the standard process for calculating all fees.
Is there any way to lower that? Because I think
Council-
$353 is just, I think it's just way too much.
Yeah, so council is ultimately the one that's adopting the fee schedule. Ultimately, what this is saying, we're a city, there's no profit included in these numbers. This is just the cost of doing business based on the studies that have been performed and applying the CPI. And so council certainly has the option to say we want to lower fees. Ultimately, staff was tasked with from a cost recovery standpoint to say how much does it cost to do these things, and the users of these things, we would like them to pay for those rather than the general fund or the general public paying. The users are the ones that are being charged. So you can lower this, and ultimately the costs associated would be borne by ultimately the general fund rather than the user. So.
Well, I don't want to lower all the fees. I just want to lower the one fee.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if I may. So, Councilman Gunners, I know you and I had a chance to talk about this briefly this morning, and I think at that time you had mentioned specifically newer, it's kind of a burden on new businesses.
It is.
Are you wanting to lower the fee across the board, or would it be sufficient to create a discounted fee for a brand new business? And I guess we can work on defining what a brand new business is, but for a new business, it's 75% off the fee or whatever it is.
I think that's a good start.
One option might be also with the new business, there's a permanent sign coming along the way at some point, typically for a new business. And so we can kind of wrap that up into a permanent sign fee. You'd get a temporary at some sort of discounted rate, and we can kind of work through that process too.
Yeah, because there's new businesses out there that just want to put one of those little signs out there by the street, and
kind of a coming
our
soon
code
type of
enforcement lays down the law. And, they're barely making it as it is as a new small business. And one of them is the guys that do my haircut, believe it or not. And she's complained to me about how expensive it is, and she was barely able to open that business. And I feel for her. And she's not the only one. There's multiple businesses that I'll go to a restaurant, and they've complained to me about the temporary signs, and they told me how much it was, and I'm like, well, you sort of got a point there. I think $353 is a little much for a temporary sign where they have to take it back down when they close and then put it back up when they open. I mean, what is our cost on that? Do you have a breakdown on that one item?
So as part of the temporary sign permit, part of what the cost is as you mentioned, you put up the temporary sign, they usually specify the time limits that they have on that. And so code enforcement has to do those follow-up inspections to make sure that they're complying with the temporary sign ordinance. And so that really is where the cost is that the administration of the sign, because they're doing it within a specified period that they identify in their application, just warrants more trips to deal with that. Certainly the goal as part of the community design is making sure that the permanent sign is in effect, and that's kind of the priority, but it's the follow through on, okay, it's temporary, is it really temporary, or does it stay up? And then we get complaints of just litter kind of everywhere. And so it's that balancing at for code, which drives part of the labor cost.
I still think it's high. I still think it's high. So you're telling me that the cost is, well, they've already paid for the permit. So you're telling me the cost is them having to go back out and check and make sure that they have taken it down.
Yes,
Is that what
that's
you're
part
saying?
of it, yeah. So it's that follow through on the back end in compliance with the temporary sign permit is what drives a lot of that cost.
Okay, I still think it's high.
Councilmember Gardner, if I can add to that, your question regarding the breakdown for that, it's a total of 2 hours of staff time. There's an hour and a half, there's a half hour for an office assistant, another 3/4 of an hour for office assistant, and 3/4 of an hour for a code enforcement officer to do 4 things, and that's receive the application, review the application, complete the inspection, and then issue the approval letter.
For the love of God.
I agree. She hit me up too. that price is high for a temporary sign. I think you're right. I agree. It's high, but you almost got to go through the whole schedule. I went through the schedule. You've almost got to go through there and decide what you think is too high, because I guarantee you, if you looked at all these prices that we charge, and the way it was explained to me is that it cost us money to do business, and if we don't keep up with the CPI, Consumer Price Index, then we're paying them to do business instead of them paying us to do business. And so that's what got me off the ledge. But I agree that the price on the temporary sign is high. I don't know what the costs are exactly, but anyway, are we going to add that to our motion here, or what are we going to do?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, just one thing to add too, and again, it's completely the purview of the council to set fees lower. You can't set them higher than what we've calculated as our actual cost to provide the service, but keep in mind that these are user fees. So what does that mean? It's not a tax. It is someone is asking a service of the city. It's coming and using city resources, city staff, city time, and they are receiving a service from the city. And so while the council has absolutely the legal ability to set the fee lower, keep in mind what that means. That means that the taxpayer is in essence subsidizing a portion of the cost of that service that's being provided, right? So if, we either charge the person who's receiving the service, the cost of that service, or we charge something less than that, then who's paying for that? The general fund, all the taxpayers.
But if we don't have any businesses, because there's no business, because they can't, it's a double-edged sword.
No, absolutely true. And that's why council has discretion on this. I would advise against going line by line and looking at that, at every fee.
I don't want to do
because,
that.
yeah. But certainly if, the council can certainly set this fee lower if that's your desire.
Okay.
How do you go about doing that?
Well, they charge a finder's fee to cut my hair, so I don't have to worry about that.
Okay, so we got down to, there's no applicant rebuttal, no public comment. I'll close the public hearing. Okay, discussion. You want to make a motion to approve less that particular fee?
Can we get that incorporated in the regular signage, or the,
Councilman, if I may, Mayor Pro Tem.
Sure.
If it's the council's desire to think more on this, one thing you could do is approve the fee schedule minus the temporary, the fee for the, well, if we don't approve the fee, yeah. It would hold as is. Right, so you could approve the adjustments on everything else, minus this one fee on the temporary sign permit, and then direct staff to come back with a plan to address the concerns that were voiced today.
Well,
And
what do
I
you
was-
think's fair? What do you think's fair? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What do you think's fair?
I'd say at least half that.
So Mayor Pro Tem, what I was gonna say is, I'm also working with staff to bring forward an item to reset certain fees and fines related to parking. So we will have a future public hearing on fines and fees upcoming. So if you, as the city manager explained, if you just wanna pull the temporary signage item from the approval today, staff can work on it and we can bring it back in conjunction with that other update to the parking bail schedule.
With that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to ask for a motion, and it's going to include pulling that item out and bringing that back at a future date. So how about that, folks?
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Got
make a
to
motion.
approve?
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion to approve and a second, less the temporary sign permit fee. Any further discussion? Oh, wait, do I have to? No, we're good. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so let's see here. Let me go back to my notes here. That brings us to announcements. Boy, aren't we happy about that? So, any announcements, John?
I just want to say thank you to the city manager, the city employees, and the sheriff's department for addressing a decent amount of graffiti that was found on the east side of town in the past week or two. And it's all been addressed, so thank you.
You, sir? There it is again.
Autumn Fest.
Boom, there it is, Autumn Fest.
Make a difference, Five Winds Ranch.
Okay. How
Love
about
to
you,
see
sir?
everybody there.
Okay, I'd just like to compliment our staff on doing an outstanding job. Even though I bumble through this meeting, you guys do a fantastic job, and I really appreciate what you do. Appreciate CAL FIRE, appreciate our police department, and appreciate the general public for coming and sharing their ideas with us. And we apologize for sometimes not making decisions that are real popular, but we're doing the best we can for everyone that lives in Yucaipa. So that's how I'll close the meeting. So thank you very much for coming.